We on another episode, Plugged In with Kinfolk The Plug.
Delvan Othello in the building.
We got a very special guest today. You know, platinum artist, actor, CEO now, legendary, YoungBleed. What up, man?
What's going on?
Hey, what's good with y'all, family? How y'all making it on that end, man?
Oh, we good over here, man. I mean, how's it? Where you at?
I'm out here in Louisville, Kentucky, man. Been up here since the COVID, man.
Okay.
Yeah. So how's everything out there right now with COVID going
on? It's one of the lesser places compared to the masses, but we right kind of in the heart, in the middle of everything, Indiana and different states around, man. So I've been, kind of dipping and diving, getting to my spot dates how I can, whatever opening, depending on what's going on in the city. But across the country, it's crazy and definite here, man. A lot of deaths, some close and near people and, people far away. But yeah, everybody trying to stay masked up and stay out the way,
Yeah.
Are you originally from Baton Rouge?
Yeah, man. Born and raised the South Side, man. Yeah, South Side of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, man. Absolutely.
Okay.
So, where does it start at musically in Baton Rouge for you?
Really in that same area. I mean, and when I say that, with my moms and my pops, I tell everybody I was kind of born this way. The way she read me Dr. Seuss when I was in the embryo. So in the way she would have been placed on the earth, I believe I would have had the same evolution. About 4 or 5 years old, I had an uncle that taught me how to play congas, bongos, and a live stick. So when you sum up the word rap, and you know what I mean, I heard a lot of the hip hop, New York pioneers, and anybody else say, rap means rhythm and poetry. So I tell everybody I was born this way. So my mother and father happened to evolve within each other somewhere around, and I'm sure maybe before that, but I'm born in 74, so somewhere around that 73, 74 evolution, you know what I mean? I come right in it as hip hop was coming right in it, you know what I mean?
So who was your inspirations of coming up?
That goes so many ways musically. It's not just, I'm in the hip hop genre, but it's infinite music for me, and it starts with my family members. Like I said, my uncle. My mother might even sung a little bit and did different things, aunts and aunties that sung a little. My grandmother was the how you say that, the president of the choir at our Southern Baptist Church. So I sung in the choir young. I was in the opera young in elementary school. And one of my childhood best friends by the name of Chris Miller was the only 2 black boys in the opera called Carmen, not the hip hopper Carmen, but the original opera Carmen. Come to the Baton Rouge Little Theater when we was in elementary school, and we had a music teacher by the name of Miss Barnes, who was an older black lady, and she poured us out the crowd and congregation and put us, amongst the Pentecostal churches in different places we hadn't been, and started training us for that opera. So I had that part of music. My granddaddy played blues, had another uncle played piano, so everything was there. And I just kind of, like I said, as hip-hop evolved, I evolved how hip-hop evolved. From the microphone, writing, and pop lock and break dance and beatbox ballads to 2 turntables. So I was able to kind of always mix everything together. And, I was blessed to have a lyrical form or a literature form that formulated itself on paper somewhere in the 4th grade. I was about 9 years old when I first put that pen to the pad. 1983 to be exact, man. I ain't never stopped since then. So, that's the basis of
it.
What was the first record you bought?
Funny you asked that, man. It had to be 1983, which would have been the same time my 9-year-old birthday. For my birthday, my mother bought me, the only thing she bought me was the first self-titled Run DMC tape. You see what I'm saying? So we had a poetry teacher. Yeah, you know what I mean? The self-titled Run, so the brick wall in the background, so, off the bricks, man, and coming out them bricks into it. We had a poetry teacher somewhere around the 4th grade that'd come sit in class for about an hour, and she taught us how to write different levels and different forms of poems. And one that I remember the most, because it was the simplest form to write, was a haiku poem, which is like 3 lines. 2 of them rhyme and 1 of them not gonna rhyme. So that was the shortest, quick way of just kind of putting words together for me. I had an aunt and an uncle that used to write me poetry and different things like that. And what I would develop when I got that tape, I wanted to do something in a rhyme format. And of course, I was a fan to the Sugar Hill Gang, anybody that I could get my hands on. You know, around that Run DMC evolving time. So, you know, that wasn't the first rappers I listened to, but that's the first tape that I had. And they had a song on that tape called Wake Up that I never forget. And what I did was take in everything that I had grew into and what was in the neighborhood and the culture. And I kind of made it my own thing in a poetry form. And at the time, the poetry teacher was it was some poetry book or something was going around to all the elementary school students, and whoever had the best poems, they would make it in that book. And mine happened to make it into that book when I was 9 years old, and that book reached our state's capital. So it's a great accomplishment for me. So it became, you know, my life dream. So I felt like if at 9, if I could reach our state's capital and tell them what I do in the future, so I stuck with
it. You got a favorite Run DMC song?
I have a lot of favorite Run DMC songs. Rock Box, you know what I mean? Rock Box is one of my favorite rap songs in the world back then, especially out there. Lil Sucker MCs and Jam Master J, you name it, the whole record. But the one that stuck out and that was right, I want to say that probably was the first hip hop video that pierced MTV. Was on Rock Box, and with the rock guitar over the hardcore drums and how Ron yelled and how him and D coincided themselves and JL do his breaks on in between. I fell in love with that at an early age, you know what I mean? And I liked rock music a little bit after my life. And that whole time, like I said, of MTV evolving, I remember the first 2 black men to be on that had videos, period, was Michael Jackson and Prince. You see what I'm saying? So when Run DMC came about, that was like the first rap record, if I'm not mistaken. So I grew right with that evolution. I sit down like in the COVID and what we going through now, you know, my mom used to think it was a problem because I sit in front of MTV first. I play outside and run with my guys and you know, this, that, and the other. But for the most part, if MTV was on, I'm a watch Quiet Ride, Def Leppard, and everything. I was a rock head in that sense. You know what I mean? And from Jimi Hendrix back. So being a young kid and that kind of connoisseur of music with having all that in the family and who didn't play live instruments or sing vocally, they had a good ear for music. My pops, my step pops, you know what I mean? My uncles. So it was always around me so I could sit around myself and absorb all that. So yeah, that's the evolution. And like I say, with that rock and rap coming together at that time, a song like Rock Box, yeah, that was my favorite rap song from Run DMC for a long time.
Rock Box. Okay. I got a question, you know, since we're talking about this, how do you feel about the new music nowadays? Since you've been, you know, somebody that's been at the beginning of hip hop and seen the evolution, how do you feel about the young?
Well, naturally, you know, of course, you know, I'm one of the representatives for that young generation. And way back then, I tell all the youngsters now, I still got a young on my name. I'm 40 plus, you know, nowadays, and it's been a long time. So naturally, I had to have a love for this and a love for the culture and the music. So I remember coming up and my parents or whatever saying that this rap thing might be a fad, have something else to fall back on. I understood what they mean throughout different courses in life, but long story short, I'm pleased with what's going down, that the torch been passed and they keeping it alive for everything that was shot against rap music before, you know, F the Police and so on and so forth, just breaking that when it was just vocals and drums when we was listening to New York in the late 70s into the 80s, then we grew into the 808 and bass lines and so on and so forth. So to see the culture still, you know, pumping and staying alive, I'm real pleased with it. Now, not saying that to say that I'm pleased with everything inside the culture. I see some differentials and different changes as far as, you know, manhood and stuff like that. Guys we looked up to was those guys that became our superheroes in that sense after the guys in the 70s, well, the 60s into the 70s, from the revolutionaries into the black exploitation flicks, the Superflies and different things like that. Then we grew into hip hop and we became those poster children of those guys long before me. So, and that gave you some kind of uprightness and, you know, and whatever was your genre of hip hop. It's not just one form of rap. Now, you know, from Christian rap to gangster rap, you name it, and all the in between. I'm able to see it, you know, constantly morph itself. But saying that to say this, we had most stand-up guys in that sense that made little boys like myself want to be a stand-up man, especially kids that came from broken homes. So those hip hop became our father figure in that sense. So I'm pleased with that it's still going on, but some of the stuff that's kind of degrading it, I don't dig, you know what I mean?
That's dope. So what was your first solo deal?
My first solo deal, I was probably about 15 years old. You know, I've been signing contracts somewhere since about 15. I was on the radio about 17 years old. Stole my first tape on the corner at about 16, 17. And based off of that deal, which was a production deal, shouts out to Mike B. Williams, the OG, where he was from Cleveland, Ohio at the time, but had family members. So at me being 14, 15, running under guys like that was just starting out with their wives and kids and family, you know, if he did production and worked at the main radio station, being an older head, his wife was probably a school teacher. So I was a kid that was taken in and I can go certain places, kind of privileged in that sense to get in some of the backroom studios that I didn't know existed in my city. If I started writing and rapping and, you know, between 82, 83, I started recording in 85 for sure, about 11 years old. So a lot of shots out to a lot of old men from where I'm from that's not here. And I had the opportunity to record. And I know what it is to record on reel-to-reel, 4-track tape and so on and so forth. So just growing into the technical side of it, like I said, start back with those guys, Michael B. Williams, Todd Sterling, and they family, you know, from Todd numbers from the east side of Mayfair, East Baton Rouge side of where I was from. I kind of grew up 2 neighborhoods and a few on the in-between. But that was a place where I was kind of discovered by some older guys that was interested in putting out a rap record, just experimenting with music and not necessarily artists, you know what I mean? And I kind of got picked out of pile. I knew a younger brother to my guy Todd that I mentioned that I went to school with. And when they was looking for a young rapper, he pointed me out and they kind of started me out, started taking me to the studio and started making records. So the first tape I ever put out was a tape called Much Love, which I had a sample of a Bar K record called You Can't Run Away From My Love, with a sample of the Friends drums. Shouts out to Houdini, rest in peace to Ecstasy, man.
Ecstasy, man.
Yeah, I had the honor and pleasure of meeting them a few years back, man. I lived in Virginia for about a year, and I went to the Fresh Fest. You know, they rebought the Fresh Fest back, and I had a chance to meet Kango, Dr. Ice, and Jaleel, his brothers, and different things. So I've been a fan of all those hip-hop connoisseurs. So here again, rest in peace to that man. I met him in the flesh. He was a real peaceful brother. So I hate to hear, you know, whatever took place. But saying that, to get back where we was, yeah, I had that the Friends drums under a Bar K sound, and all the old heads and people in the town liked that record. We had a police shooting at a time. A few of my young homeboys, way back before what we're going through now, was murdered by cops. You know what I mean? From Baton Rouge to our outskirts. So I had a flip side song that was called "When Dirty Harry Meets Sally." I used to have a 22 I called Sally. So it was a kind of cop killing song and an effort to kind of fight back for what they had did. One of my 16-year-old homies I wasn't pleased with the governor okay that killed one of my older homies. You know what I mean? Different things like that. So I sell that tape in the high schools, the middle schools, and on the corner that we hustled on, and in moms and pops record stores that existed at the times, and whatever corner stores that let me put a tape in it, plain white cover, no picture, clear tape. You know what I mean? With my name stitched on it. I had another rap name at the time, which was Total Darkness. You know what I mean? So, you know, that was my first experience and distributing. You know, we talk about non-distribution. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but it was just like hustling to me. If I could sell cocaine and weed, and I could sell a tape, you can believe me in my talent. So that was my graduation from the streets, and the rest of the blessing. You know what I mean? Just like how you say, just coming from my first handwritten and hand delivered tape. You know what I mean? For starters, yeah, man.
Were you ever in a group?
Yeah, I evolved with a lot of groups. Actually, I didn't start solo in elementary school. We actually was trying to emulate Run DMC. Shouts out to my friend and brother Street Hood, and otherwise Darian Williams. He was like my DMC. You see what I'm saying? When we was in the 4th grade together. So, but later on, I would go to a different middle school, you know what I mean? He'll go to different, you know, our mothers moved to different parts of the town and it separated us as kids. So I kept my dream going. He kept, you know, he'll tinker with it, but, you know, the street thing or whatever he grew into as a man, he grew more in that direction. And we still friends to this day. I was able to see him a couple of years back and it was a blessing to me. I've been looking for him. You know, he's still around and coming from where we come from. And we still laugh about that to this day and what I became into the world, because we remember sitting in fourth grade Miss Martin class and getting letters and poems and stuff like that snatched from us. So, you know, to grow how we grew here again from where we come from, man, it's a blessing to still be alive and, you know, him still be doing whatever he loved doing and me doing as well. But Darian Williams, we started off just like Ron DMC, each other alter ego. Silky Slim was an OG rapper and cousin of mine, and, you know, a true gangster from the streets, you know, gang-wise and otherwise, Louisiana, California. So we all looked up to Silky Slim. So what we did was take his name and we thought about what we wanted our group name to be. So my first group, like Ron DMC, was Silk and Slim. We just took Silk's name and broke it down, but he was a little more stockier guy than me, so he went with the name Silk. I went with the name Slim because I was a skinnier guy. You see what I'm saying? So I started off with a group ever since I was 9, but I'm the one guy, a lot of people tell you from my city, that kept doing this. You know what I mean? Some guys strayed away from it, different things happen in life. It's a few people still around that inspired me. So, you know, shouts out to underground legends all around the world and definitely where I come from. Yeah, man.
So when did you go into with CeeLo in the concentration camp?
Somewhere around 93, 94, and definitely 95. Me and Local's homeboy since like middle school, 11 and 12 years old. And the talk around the school was he was my DJ. He had a dream to be a DJ. I always had a dream to be the rapper. And for a while, that was just our talk. And, you know, we ran with each other streetwise because we both was from South Baton Rouge. So when the neighborhood wars and all that jump off, we was more involved in that than ever doing a demo tape or anything. When I was recording opposite of him. And a lot of DJs I had, you know, rest in peace to my cousin DJ AD, Adrian Cato, man, passed away last year, was the first guy to teach me to plug up a realistic mixer and 2 turntables and all that. So I was blessed to have that in the neighborhood, different guys that had their own little gadgets. And Loke was one of the guys that, you know, unfortunately, other than talk, we never had that hookup together at that time. So later in life, in our later teenage years, we'll come back together somewhere around the early 90s. I moved back to South Baton Rouge. He was still living in the hood or had moved back or whatever. And, you know, we was more streetwise. So we were running to each other in the streets and talk about different things. And, you know, I think I actually sold him one of the tapes that I was selling at the time. And maybe a year or two after that, he formulated CeeLo Records. And brought me in toward the end of Who Was Gonna Ride to listen to what he had recorded and did different things like that. So we morphed back into a group, you know what I mean, which was naturally his company and everything else. So I was like the second artist off of CeeLo Records, you know what I mean? I signed a deal with my homeboy and we started to build his label. So somewhere to answer your question, Ron, you know, definitely 93, 94. And the camp will formulate maybe a year or so after that when we started bringing other members in. Shouts out to Lead Time for starters. Then eventually Max Manella, Javon, Happy Perez, which was a group called Lay Low, and Boo Nitty, and I mean, with Boo, the boss player, and Growl Nitty, my brother Lucky Knuckles, and so on and so forth. So as we started to morph into a entourage, you know, at that time you had cliques like the Boot Camp Clique in New Orleans, and you had one in New York with Black Moon and those guys, and Wu-Tang, everything started to click back up. So I said, we need a click camp kind of name that signifies all of us. And I came up with the concentration camp based on, I'm born on D-Day. My grandfather was a World War II veteran. You know, I used to always like to watch the movie The Diary of Anne Frank, study a little bit about it. And kind of that had been a part of my life here against his birth on June 6th. So that made life sense to me. What really set it ablaze is I'm a fan of WC and the Mad Circle. You know, originally with Coolio, rest in peace to Crazy Tunes. And shots out to Dub C, you know what I mean, when the West was
Yeah, I'm trying
popping
to
like
get
how the
Dub on
West.
the show.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't had a chance of meeting Dub, but me and Cube was labor mates when I was at Pro Art and Mac
Yeah.
10, so I don't see those guys. But you know, I love to meet Dub. You know, I've been a Dub fan since Low Profile. You know, him and DJ Aladdin. So that's how far I go back. Crazy. So, but saying that to say this about Dub, the logo to the WC and the Mad Circle. When he was talking to Mad Circle, he talking to Earth. But when you look at that picture, it was wrapped in a barbed wire fence. So that reminded me of a concentration camp, and I just kind of took all that and made it into one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wasn't Boosie part of y'all camp?
Yeah, he came years later. You know, Boosie is a cousin of mine. We from the same neighborhood, the same block. He just born, you know, and raised across the tracks. You know, Garfield Street. That you know, we can't turn. Me and my big cousin T, man, Carlos Tucker, man, we started calling Garfield Street G Street, you know, in those early 90s and maybe even the late 80s, but right in those early 90s. So when you hear him talking G Street and I'm talking G Street, there's different sections. I'm born in the middle part where it's a hill, you know what I mean? It's a hill that kind of sits in the middle, it's flat on both ends. You go all the way to the bottom, and then the last part of G Street is the hole. The opposite direction is across the tracks toward the Mississippi River, and that's Boots uprising, my uprising being that top of the hill. Then of course I moved to the bottom of it, you know what I mean, to the hole and all that. I lived all the way, you know, the whole G Street. So he came along and being a few years younger than me after I left the camp and that type of thing. You know, Loke still kept the umbrella and kept the labor name, of course, and the Clickalation name, but I had left the group, you know what I mean? Like Snoop leaving Death Row back then, man. So, you know, they kept it, the Camp Brothers and so on and so forth. And being the youngest of the camp, somewhere along them lines came about. So, yeah, he was original member, but a later on member.
You and CeeLo still cool today?
I mean, we got our behind the scenes, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't have no hate toward the brother, but, you know, it's a funny thing, man. And I said this since we was kids, we never had no problems with each other. We'll click up and, you know, fight 40 guys, you know, 40 to 4 guys, you know, where we come from. We was rooted that way and we back down for nothing. We had to break out and run. We did, being outnumbered. But he was one of those few guys on that front line with me since a kid. And we never had no problems in life until we got into the music industry. You know what I mean? So it's a funny thing. So I don't have a hate bone in my body toward him. I hate how things had turned out. You know what I mean? I have made efforts to reach back at Loke over the years, but he's still kind of in his way about me, and I have my days about him. So, you know, I learned to leave well enough alone. But at the end of the day, I wish him well. My mother and his mother went to high school together, so we kind of bred in that sense. So, you know, and that kind of, I tell everybody this, Pac and Big ain't kill each other. Just like two other brothers, they disagreed on some things that I felt like if they would have had enough more time in life, them brothers would have embraced themselves and put the bullshit aside and continue to live. So coming in after those OGs, then of course I definitely try to do something different. But at the end of the day, to each his own. So I'm just giving it from my perspective. And if God bless a day and we can join and could get past the bullshit, then we'll go on. But in the meanwhile, life goes on.
So I feel that you always hear that story about how the industry changes people. Do you think you could speak on that? Or like, what would you say in your perspective is the reason why? Because that's a constant thing you hear all the time.
Yeah, well, I believe, everything comes down to individual purpose. So at the end of the day, we all can say what we gonna do once we get to the promised land. You know what I mean? But if you ain't never been, right. You don't know what the air smells, smell like, what the water tastes like, and so on and so forth. We can only guesstimate at that point. So a lot of the breakup and separation of the camp, everybody was growing from boys to men. So you don't know when people gonna have families and sicknesses and all kind of different things, different opinion. You have a right to have that. So at the end of the day, it's one knit family, but we grow into one house and everybody grow out into their own individual house. So I believe, depending on what your aims and your ambitions, you know what I mean, what you gonna do if you get any money, you know what I mean, learning what to do with the money, and a lot of things that you hadn't came up accustomed to. It's a whole nother education. So it's like everybody might not like to drive a fast car. You see what I'm saying? Everybody might not like to drive an old school. So at the end of the day, you kind of gotta wait for that to morph out. And and the sad part about music history is not too many groups that we know in all genres of music that started as groups that stayed together. And that's all but like a blessing and more of a curse. So at the end of the day, once you living and you're doing what you have to do to survive, we all believe in ourselves to formulate the Voltron we had. Everybody gonna go for what they know. And I believe that goes beyond our clicks, the clicks before us, and what's going on to the modern day. And me being a casualty in the sense to that musical war, I hate it. I have my days to where, hey man, maybe this ain't to do. I don't like what I see when I cut on the YouTube now. And it's like for what we thought. I remember the first death of hip hop in back in the 80s, and rest in peace with Skylar Rock with Boogie Down Production. And just watch that series take place on up to Easy E, Tupac, Mac Dre, Biggie, and even at a more alarming rate nowadays, the young guys. Like I said, my parents just say this might end up as a fad, so have something to fall back on. Now we used to say back in the days they'll have a new nigga next year, so don't get comfortable. Now when these younger guys and they say I'm still a person of the clock, to see them come so fast and blow away so fast before I can catch on to who the new rapper is, they dead and gone and got some wild police case. And believe you me, I got a million stories that's behind the scene. Jay-Z had a song years ago called Lucky Me, where the lady sings on, you only know what you see. So we take this as face value, them 5 minutes of fame and everything look hoka-dory, but you don't know what people going through behind the scenes, and that's life in general, let alone in the music world. I can speak from personal experience personally. So yeah, so at the end of the day, I say like the Mighty Pimp C used to say, man, stay prayed up to get paid up, because it's gonna take that, man. So it's about your focus with your dreams and goals in life. And if everybody had the same dream and goal, it'd be a robot factory. You did. But you have a right to your own freedom of choice and freedom of opinion. And hopefully things mix together and you bond with the right people. You have their best interest in heart and vice versa. And things could work out for us, solution to the problem. But just like y'all and me, I've been watching this since, day one. And we can go back to groups, male or female, old soul groups. You know what I mean? That led us to what we're doing now. And then I love a lot of documentaries to get to show you people real life behind the scenes. You know what I mean? So I reconcile and reflect off a lot of that to try to correct different things that I saw might have took place with Sam Cooke, or who you name them, to try to, do a little better than the last person before us, man, to hopefully recondition that condition one day.
True.
That's true. Very true.
So with your runners, you said something about Pac. Did you ever meet Pac?
No, I hadn't met Pac, man, but the funny thing, I tell everybody this story when you ask something like that. I signed to Priority Records on Sunset Boulevard, June 1997. If you rewind the tape, Big had just got murdered in March 97. So 3 months after that, all that was still in the air. Pac was gone 6 months, prior to my 6 months. Talking June, coming out of January. So June back up 3 months. Big had died back up 3 more months. Pac was murdered. So I'm right in that atmosphere at 22, growing into 23 years old, and extremely paranoid, looking at my surroundings. Everything is bigger than where I come from. It's moving so fast. You don't know your territory, and as beautiful as California is, when you're street proud, you want to go to Compton, you want to go to Inglewood, that type of thing. So I was kept out a lot of places just to stay out of what was taking place in that atmosphere and that time and vibe. So we kind of picked up that torch and brought it on home to the South for us, No Limit and Priority, and then eventually Cash Money Records. Yeah. So here again, it's like the double Dutch bus. When the girls do the jump in the jump rope shit, it's like you wait your turn, then you in the hot seat. You see what I'm saying? So it was that kind of experience for me, man, just growing into it.
So how do you do that then come about?
Kind of like, what I'm mentioning to you now. That's kind of, it's a catchphrase, but the whole thing it's a question. How do you survive? Or like how Pac used to say, how do you survive wearing 165 We say 125. You know what I'm saying? Where we come from. So it's for anybody that knew me up close and personal, and going back to my man Darian Williams and family members, anybody that saw me morph into, you know, my cousin Carlos Tucker always say, man, you know, Glenn Clifton, which is my government, YoungBleed is a byproduct of Glenn Clifton. So we kind of laugh at home. It's kind of like I made this cardboard character and sold to the world, and the world loved it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Right.
you know, Frankenstein in that sense. So for anybody that ever doubted me or anybody that watched me and knew it was something about me and not toot my own horn, and that's for anybody of success. And, you know, you're an inspiration to the people standing next to you and the people around you. You know what I mean? That and beyond ourselves, it give you a believability here in a deeper method toward God. Anything is possible. If he could do this and I grew up next door neighbor to him or in a house with him, then that should inspire you to want to get up and try to do something too. So
that's true.
Yeah, so in that sense, if I'm answering your question right, yeah, you know, it's just yeah, it's a crazy dynamic, you know what I mean?
True. So who introduced the song to Master P?
Well, like you say, when that was happening, it was just like we were going through a whole lot of stuff. And like I say, you know, answering the rest of the question and going into that, he and Loke had the connection together between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, you know, as CEOs of two companies. Then, you know, of course, they was networking and we was building on the back end as well as the rest of the artists and No Limit. And as, you know, in our path going back and forth and editing tapes in places like Cox Cable that was in New York, not New York, but New Orleans, we'll cross each other's lines and eventually we started working together. So like I say, ultimately to answer that question about how you do that is like, you know, people are gonna wonder, damn, how he went from this to this? How did that happen? You see what I'm saying? So Robert Johnson, you know, if you listen to In the Blues and go back to the myth about the crossroad, how did that young kid go from doing that, what we've been trying to do 20, 30 years in less than a year and surpass everything. So my whole thing, I can see that vision and my struggle that I, you know, it's like it's light at the end of the tunnel, but I was still in the tunnel. So I kept saying, hearing in my head, people gonna ask how you do that there, how you did this, man, how you went from that to that. But with that evolving, our relationship with No Limit was evolving, and he was doing that Bout It move, and somewhere or another through the him and C-Lo connection, he heard that record and offered us a chance to put that record on the Bout It soundtrack. You know, Loke had already appeared on the Down South Hustlers record, and I got you know, the background vocals on one of the songs called Who Am I believe, is the first time I've known C-Lo and Master P to record together, but on the Down South Hustlers compilation that came out the year 6 months prior to the Bout It soundtrack. So when that happened, Loke had made a couple of solo records, and we was finally giving myself and everybody else in the click an opportunity to do a song versus just featuring on a C-Lo record. So everybody kind of did a solo joint. If you listen to the self-titled, the very first and original Concentration compilation, and you started hearing it was more than Loke on the label. And that was my solo song to the world. Actually, you know, truth be told, when I was making that song, you know, I heard in my head a lot, you know, whether you want to say I'm the producer or co-producer, vice versa, between me and Happy Perez originally. I heard those rudiments and how they come together, and I kept saying, man, people gonna say, man, this a fool, that's a fool. I said, well, that's what I'm gonna call it. Not me being a fool, but the record is the fool. It's a damn fool. And, you know, I was also here again on, you know, all coast fan of hip hop, but definitely coming off the West Coast into the South, I was a King T fan too as well. So King T had his original album was titled Act the Fool. So I really wanted to sample the I'm finna act the fool at the end of every verse. But when I wrote it, that's how it came out. I might have wrote it a couple of times till I got everything I really wanted to say. And we put that together. And like I say, fast forward in the tape, once Loke got it to P, then it was just like a avalanche or a whirlwind. It took off, you know. It was already taking off in Baton Rouge, #1 on the radio, and spreading it throughout the southern region. But before it could finish its spread, it had went to the West Coast and already got a whim of it. really, offered me a weekend visit. You know what I mean? And the rest was history. I left Louisiana one weekend. I went to California and signed a major deal with Private Records on the strength of Master P in 1997, man. And like I said, the rest is history.
Was classic. Definitely.
It is, man.
Definitely.
You got like a favorite session of recording that whole album with No Limit?
The thing is, with us having our own home base, the only 3 records, I'll tell y'all something I never told anybody, that I recorded at No Limit for that album is the Mo Money record that features my brother Lucky Knuckles, Max Manelli and Jay Vaughn from Lay Low, which is a Beats by the Pound track. Time So Hard that features Fiend and Master P, which I believe, that was the second single off the album. But I believe, I want to say the Moby Dick produced that itself, or the whole Beats by the Pound produced that track. And the third song was, what was that? Bring the Noise, Rest in Peace to Pimp C. The only works that the world know, and for those y'all, I mentioned this a few places, but to anybody that's a true UGK and you know what I mean, shouts out to Bond, Rest in Peace to Pimp fan, the only YoungBleed and Pimp C record you got in life history, and I miss my brother and true life, but on and off screen, and most so off screen, that type of relationship as well as Mama with. But saying that to say this, Pimp produced Bring the Noise for, he told me before he passed away, for either the 504 Boys record or Mystical album, I believe. And in the middle of wrapping up my record, I turned in 14 records to P, but we had to combine, the 2 forces and added more kind of No Limit and Beats by the Pound. When I turned in the record, it was produced strictly by Happy Perez, 14 songs. So it's still like 3 to 4 unreleased songs that we took off of Balls in My World originally, turned it into No Limit. He got on Keep It Real, that was produced by Happy, him and CeeLo, and the other 3 records I just mentioned, More Money, Time So Hard, and Bring the Noise was produced by Pimp C, man. So that's the only YoungBleed Pimp C record you got in life is Bring the Noise on my Balls in My Word. But yeah, that's the truth about it. So, and this other times I've been by No Limit. I recorded an unreleased song for Snoop, man, and I believe somewhere in the near future they're gonna release that record when he came and got a part of No Limit and N9ne or something like that. But other than that, I tell anybody you want to know anything about me, if you look at the history, look at how many No Limit records I'm on. I'm not on everybody else's records. You see what I'm saying? Because truth be known, like I say here again on the strength of P, I signed a direct deal, kind of like Ice Cube leaving NWA. I signed directly to Priority Records. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, okay.
All right.
It makes total sense now.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
Yes,
how many? So when you signed with Priority, how many albums did you sign for then?
I signed for a 7-album deal, which was then, I want to say, a 7-year span or something like that. But by the time I was recording my 3rd record, which I kept my titles, you know what I mean? I always kind of foresaw things. So I always planned if I got that type of deal, I'm already have in mind what I want to do for the next 10 projects. So my own happened to be the second of that plethora. And by the time I was recording my 3rd record, which was titled Vintage, I'm all prep. I'm in the studio back in Louisiana recording, and maybe even halfway through the album. And I come back, we take a lunch break, come back from lunch, and we say email nowadays, but it was the invoice at the time.
Right.
The invoice was a paper that said, Brian Turner has just sold Priority to Capital or merged with Capital or something like that. Somebody got away with so much money. And what was over our head was way bigger than me. It came tumbling down on the whole corporation. So now I'm in a freeze frame to where they finna go through this legal battle to sort out whatever they indifferences was, and I gotta wait to put out my project. And at that time, I was doing albums that based on a 2-year frame. Do a record, put the record out, then you got to tour with that record and move a record around, before we started having these mobile studios and different things like that. So it's hard to be back home or wherever you're gonna post to record an album while you're on the road promoting the last album. So I had worked the method myself to just drop me an album within a 2-year frame. out of sight, out of mind. You don't want the fans to forget about you. They have a new nigga next year. So I'm learning how to adjust to that versus local records and selling a tape on the corner and different things like that. So I'm growing to that side of the executive side of the music business and learning how to structure myself and still be an artist at the same time. But yeah, man, that came tumbling down on us, and what I say, and everybody has their own opinions. It forced me back into an independent situation versus just sitting around, you know what I mean, and not knowing and being for sure the outcome. So what I did was, I left the label. I never been dropped from a label, contrary to what some people may think or say. But I always left the label if the situation wasn't right, and it kind of kept me at a standpoint. You know what I mean? So that's what really took place with me and Pro Order. Like I say, launched by No Limit and Master P, in particular Master P, I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, as a 22-year-old kid, in that sense, my whole focus, the next 10 years of my life gonna go like this. Then they slide the magic carpet from under you and they say, back to the grit. But I had a good enough name to where I maintained all the way up to this point. At a good independent standpoint. If I put a record out, you know what I mean, it's gonna do numbers. And before the internet and even into the system to this day. So it's, in one sense, it's a blessing and a curse,
Well, that leads into my next question then. So for artists that are coming up, would you recommend them be independent or try to sign?
Well, I guess, I see it two ways. If you got a right situation, regardless of the situation, big major or independent, if you can live, support yourself, and you're living in good commune with everything, it's about being comfortable versus the riches and the one with everything. It ain't about that type of race, you know what I mean, and competition. But whatever works for you, you know what I mean? Depending on, like I say, back to individuality, what you want. Some people just want one hot record and they want to go home. Some people want a 10-year career. So you got, as much as you expecting, you got to overdo in that sense. I always say I overwork the money. You see what I'm saying? My life is priceless to begin with, so you can't really put a number on that. You see what I'm saying? That go with so many artists. Yeah, cradle to grave. So at the end of the day, my pops taught me like this: as long as you go in and get what you went to get, then brush your shoulders off at the end of the day and go on ahead. You know what I'm saying? So all the he say, she say, he did this, that, and the other. As long as you get what you went in to get, that's all you went in to get. That gave me good leadership with myself and focus going in as a youngster, and just, taking in the game, learning the game, and knowing I'm gonna have a few scrapes and breaks here and there, just learning trial and error. So independently, I say, yeah. Like I said, I come from selling the tapes off the corner, and I didn't know what I was learning at the time. But by the time I grew into the mass game, then I already had a kind of definition of the game, what to do. And if all else failed, I know how to sell my own music. So sure. Here again, when the internet came along, yeah, I mean, it's a sense sack in that sense of the word. But, life comes with trials and tribulations. So, you got to go through something to get something. So all that's within the same inspiration to be able to have. You ain't been through nothing, you ain't got nothing to talk about. So it kind of 360 degrees completes itself at the end of the day for me. So whatever worked for you, mine is a 360-degree deal. Like I said, it's something that.
Right?
Yeah.
So how did you feel about the No Limit Chronicles?
I looked at it, and like I say, I don't know every story and everybody individual thing, but it was a beautiful thing. It was a good look and all that. And how I kind of describe myself to give you a picture frame when you're looking at the Bout It movie. I'm kind of like Mac 10 on Bout It. I'm the light-skinned cousin that come around when it's time for me to do something. Other than that, I wasn't around with a whole lot of what was taking place. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's that kind of love for P and them and the whole family. So it's a good look. Anything that's progress, I'm like Richard Pryor said a long time ago, rest in peace. I'm happy for any nigga doing anything, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. So in that sense of the word, to each his own on personal levels and what's going on with, it's a lot of things we can get in when you peel the cloth back from No Limit. And here again, and not trying to get deep and into that direction with Free C Murder and different things like that. So a lot of, what's in place. Yeah, rest in peace to Magic Slim. It's a lot when I opened that file that I was, around somewhat in the beginning, was able to see kind of go good and bad in a lot of situations. So at the end of the day, I wished everybody well, and hopefully everything sorts itself out or what have we, you know what I mean?
Do you have a favorite artist that was on No Limit that you liked?
Oh man, it was too many not to like.
Right.
I tried not to be a favorable guy. And when you know somebody personally, then it's a different dynamic. You know what I mean? Even if he might not be whoever you want to consider your favorite, whatever. He's a good friend of mine. I done did records with guy and got it at me. Well, this guy on the record, he can barely rap out. But what he means to me in life is more than the rap thing. So it depends on, I can't really put the whole category in a top 3 or top 5. Like I say, seeing it that long since the end of the 70s into now, I got a lot of favorites in all coasts. You see what I'm saying? But to narrow it down, of course, Mystical, Slim, C, Silk did what he did on his first few records, and whatever he was on was cool. So I like everybody in their own different ways. You see what I'm saying? You don't want to hear, like I say, everybody sounding the same as the Robot Factory. So I want to hear his style, or his flavor, her style, her flavor, so on and so forth. So yeah, the whole umbrella and the whole fam, Cain and Abel, them Gotti boys, and just, you just make me think about a whole lot, of course, Mia. So serve on, and once I get to thinking, everything just kind of unfolds itself, Moby and so on and so forth. But everybody had a beautiful thing over there. I'm just, for where it's at now, the reunion tour and all that, that's a good look up to hear again, to see that portion of it. Was talking about the young generation carrying the torch, to even still be able to go around and do a reunion tour that I was kind of in and out of, you know what I mean? And that's a different story. But at the end of the day, stepping outside the box, I'm pleased that it still exists, and it's still credible, and what's the word I'm looking for? It's still relevant, more or less, to this day. Yeah.
So are you gonna do any of the No Limit tour?
Well, the thing was, I started last year at the end of November. I did a Chicago show. Then for some reason, I wasn't invited pretty much to the rest of the shows. And even if my name was on it, so we had that kind of situation behind closed doors, just, to be brief. And from that, I don't know what the situation is. So I kind of walked away from the table just to stay away from the complications. Right. But, maybe we don't know what the future holds. But yeah, I made my extra effort last year. And after so many years of saying what we was going to do as a family, like I say, not having a direct No Limit record ties, the way I wasn't a direct No Limit artist, then I got one foot in there and one out. They call on me, I'm there, but not always kind of did my own thing.
I mean, but you probably still got relationships with a couple of the artists that was on there, right?
Yeah, we still talk. I'm part of a podcast station, man. I'm a co-host out there in H-Town. Shouts out to Banging 832 Radio. So every Tuesday night, we do New Music Tuesday, where we bring the up-and-coming underground artists, you know what I mean, or underground artists that hadn't had that major break. On Thursday nights, we do Throwback Thursday, where I done had some of the legends come through, Serv-On, Mercedes, Rico.
Okay.
Yeah, we like brothers and sisters. It's just like any other stereo good family, to where we come from different sections, but it's love at the end of the day. We ain't around here blowing each other heads off and really talking down. But of course, we all got a right to agree and disagree. So at the end of the day, when they get to that direction and all that, if we really got love, you're gonna walk away from that, and hopefully, shit trickle down, and we'll get back to it if meant to be. So that's how I always took that. So at the end of the day, if I need to call Mo, I could call Mo. If I really need to call P, we can make something happen. But imagine his what I tell everybody when I come in, P was already 10, 100 yards in the game. So keeping up and learning to run at that pace, you see what I'm saying, was one thing. So you could imagine where the man is business-wise, and so many collective things he keep up with, let alone everybody else that might have wasn't doing business or semi-business, and we done grew, you know what I mean? We talking over a 20-year span and legacy here now. So when we have time for each other and different things, cross, then it's that type of thing. But for the most part, I got the majority of everybody's phone number and they got mine, you know what I mean? So keep it cheap.
That's dope. So what made you go to the West Coast and sign with Febo?
Well, try to make, short story. I was, I was a Sebo fan like anybody else in the world.
Real
I
gas
actually used to
driver.
bang Sebo records on Godfrey. Man, the bald head nuts, you know what I mean? So off the Gas Chamber album, I used to hear him talk about mixing Old English and orange juice and
Yeah.
mixing Crazy Hearts with orange juice. Okay,
Yep.
so my granddaddy raised me drinking Old English long before I know about the Easy E and all that. That was one of his 5 drinks for breakfast. My granddaddy being a war veteran, he went blind. So to shake off his tears and pain, he got drunk all the time. You know what I mean? So long story short, so when that came out, I was fun and used to drinking Old E. So I mixed that Old E with some orange juice one day, and that became a thing on my block. You know, my cousin's mama put Old English and orange juice in one of them old orange and white coolers where it was like a fountain you press the button. Yeah.
Gatorade
What I
cooler.
used to, yeah, we'll drink that at the house parties long before I know I meet a Steve-O. So when one day one of my managers and lifetime homeboys, Uncle Paul, come to me and say, man, you saw this Murder Dog magazine with Yuck Mouth and Sebo in it, with Sebo saying you wanted the artist that he wouldn't mind working with. I wasn't the only one. Somebody asked him a question, and that was, some of the artists that he had in mind that he'd love to work with. And out of 3 to 5 guys, I was one of those guys. So naturally, I sent my people to find his people. And unfortunately, at the time, Bo was doing a little jail time, but he still made the extra effort to make a 3-way call. I never forget, and reach out to me once my people, well, however he got the message. And one day he gave me a phone call. I was still living in Louisiana, and we made plans to meet each other when we came home. And he asked me, was I interested in doing something with West Coast Mafia? So what we actually did was like a co-op deal. I had a label called Detention Home Entertainment at the time. So we co-op those deals. I went to California and shouts out to T-Po and sat down and, signed to make it happen. And a few months or so after that, Bo would come home, and the day he come home was the day my record hit California, and it was in mastering. So I say my gift to you when you come home was the Under the Capo record, Rise Through the Ranks. You know what I mean? I want to say it was like my 5th album or something like that. And that was my gift to him when he came home. And we've been, from that day forward, he come down, I want to say a few months or so later, on tour. And right before Hurricane Katrina, so I remember that was 2005, it swooped me up in Texas, but he popped up in the middle of the night. I wasn't prepared. I had just got a case in Texas, moving out to Dallas. And unfortunately was on probation. He was on parole. So we always were supposed to do a song called Parole and Probation. We wasn't really supposed to even hang around each other at the time. So I couldn't really leave the state of Texas, and he was on his way. And I want to say they toured the country. I think they was on their way to Florida, up the East Coast and back to the West Coast. So we pulled over in a hotel parking lot and, embraced for the first time, took pictures, did a little DVD, little shot, and they went on. But maybe later that year, he had a sister that lived maybe 7 minutes up the street from me. And he'll come visit her and then stay with us sometimes. So it was like getting on a school bus in the morning. We would wake up to each other. And we had a phenomenal time the days we spent in Texas. Get up, go get us something to smoke, something to eat, and we go to the studio and make records and just, ride and just, learn Dallas. So yeah, so with that type of connection, I say, Rakim is my favorite rapper of all time. But I say Bo in real life, in the physical, Bo became my favorite rapper and big brother and and best friend to that degree, coming out the West Coast, because what he did for me was look up from North California and come way past LA through Texas and gave me a chance when I needed an extra chance to revitalize myself in the industry and in the West. So that's what he did for me. So naturally, West Coast Mafia for life, man.
So how many albums did you put out on West Coast Mafia?
Really just 2. The Rise Through the Ranks record and the second album I did. I couldn't hear you.
You said the second one was wasn't it Once Upon a Time in America?
In America, yes, sir. Yeah, I was the second one, 2007, man. I want to say the year Pimp died, or right before that, I was able to get Pimp C that album before he passed away. But yeah, we did those 2 records, and Bo had a few things going on. I had some opposite things going on, so it kind of separated us as far as living in Texas together. And we still continue to do records with him. I just spoke to him probably about a month ago, so we still check on each other. We'll have our Spitter Spiders and Round the Sisters. One sister say, y'all like Big Brother and Little Brother. I want to say he a year or 2, at least 2, not 3 years older than me. and we'll rock like that. You know what I mean? Being grown men. So I had that utmost respect and love for Bo, man. Like I say, coming down and having the opportunity to rebuild from an independent standpoint and dominate two coasts. You see what I'm saying? And being two legends to do that, man. So yeah, here again, shout out South Bo, West Coast Mafia.
So how did Roy Jones come into the play?
Oh man, wanted to tape a little bit. All this kind of morphed within those couple of years, 2004 and 2005. Before I left and move to Texas, you know, I ran with Magic for a little while. You know, I had my individual time with everybody. You know, we all be together as a whole family. Then we all have our separatism. And during the time of Magic leaving No Limit, he was back to his independence, I think, in the direction of going to a Koch or somebody. And he was working on a project and happened to live in Baton Rouge at the time. So my little brother, Lucky Knuckles, know him. And I never met Magic when I was around No Limit. So we didn't meet like that. We met in the street. And my brother said, you know, Mr. Magic come by, you know, come holler at me all the time. I said, oh, for real? He was asking about you. I said, man, give him my number and let's, you know, whoop, whoop, whoop. And one day I was heading out of town. I had a cousin, rest in peace, T thing. I used to take my pit bulls to before I left to watch my dogs while I was going out of town. And I was standing in his driveway, one of my puppies, and Magic pulled up just out of the blue and in one of our neighborhoods. And you know, where he talked, he was the only guy in life, you know, and a lot of New Orleans guys might say that, what's up, Shaggy? Hey, Shaggy, what's happening? So, you know, they called me Shaggy. So we chucked it up day one, day one. He told me he wanted to do a record with me that he was working on. And to me, it seemed like it took a year to do that record, but maybe it was 3 to 6 months, not too long after that. And for the first time in life, I did a record that where, unlike anybody else and the other artists that started a record, they're going to put the verse on, the topic, and the hook, and you pick it up from there. He had his hook in the record. In the beginning of the song, the first verse was blank, the hook come on again, I'm listening to the whole record. And his verse come in the middle of the record. I'm like, man, you know, what's this? What's going on? What you doing with this? He said, you like that? I said, yeah. He said, man, you can get on the first verse. He said, us in New Orleans, we call you the jump off boy. You know how to jump off a record. I was like, okay, cool. I was already hearing stuff in my head. So I took off, like how Poppy explained with Digital Underground, and he was cutting hair, and they gave him an opportunity to be on the same song. So he might have wrote that rap in about 15 minutes. But I did about the same thing, jumped on that record, and we started to run around. You know, here again, Gulf Coast with it, maybe a little bit of Texas, definitely Louisiana, Alabama will go through, and eventually he kind of took off and started going in the Georgia direction himself, and into Pensacola with Roy Jones. They had already had a relationship. So in the midst of that, I had heard years ago that Roy, you know, he wanted to work with me, but, you know, Roy was like my step-papa's on favorite boxer. You know what I mean? Within this day and time. Mine was Mike Tyson. You know, it's ironic what we just witnessed, but
Yeah.
Right.
Tyson was my, you know what I mean? And later on, Roy. But, you know, of course, Tyson was there, and it was a heavyweight before that. So, you know, I was a Mike Tyson fan, so we'll go and debate back and forth about that. You never know the people you're going to meet in life. But long story short, do that connection between Magic and Roy Jones, Roy started sending for me and doing different things, you know, paper-wise and otherwise, and started to bring me out to Pensacola. But for a short time, man, Magic had a problem with the song because I felt he ran off with the song when they did the remix with the YoungBleeds, and Roy ain't kind of, you know, I felt cut out the record. But in retrospect, you hear a sample of me and Lil Boosie in that record. So, you know, they took care of business on both ends, you know, for both records. You know, we receive our residual and that type of thing. But the true origin to that song, when we made it, we ran a little while, and it's like every show we'll go to, we was from the bottom of Louisiana to Monroe, Louisiana. When the MC would get the mic after we'll close the show, they'll say, next week, Soulja Slim. Everywhere we go, we kept hearing Slim now. So the record didn't have a third verse on it. We was just doing the first two verses at the show. Right. Just testing the water. But here again, long story short, me and Magic was coming out. And once we developed the chemistry and recognized the chemistry we had between each other, we said, man, we need to do a collabo record together called Country Boys and City Slippers. See, us in Baton Rouge, we always call the New Orleans boys because it's a bigger city, faster city, more closer to New York than we is. The city. If you had to go get gold teeth back in the day, hey man, I'm going to the city to get some gold. You know, they wasn't doing it in Baton Rouge at the time. We was more country center, so they called us country boys, and they was city slickers. So we said, well, you know, let's do an album, you know, to kind of explain that. So we really did like a series of 10 songs. The only song that was released was I Smoke, I Drank. And we parted ways for a minute, but I think I got access to that record. I'm gonna try to release that record for the years out if I can get my hands on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you definitely need to put that up.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So we started doing that, and like I say, that record was one of the unfinished records where he said, man, we coming out the studio from working on that project 4, 5 in the morning, smoking and the ride off. He said, man, you know who I'm gonna put on that record? I say, who? He say, Soulja Slim. I say, that's who you put on it. And me and Slim had never met in life. I get good things about from Moby Dick to whoever. Slim love you, man. He want to meet you. Woo, 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 woo. But they was living between, I guess, still going back and forth in New Orleans. So I wasn't around if he was around and vice versa. So the night I recorded with Snoop, C Murder was out. You know, Free Mac as well. I was trying to say earlier, Mac was out. We all was in No Limit building on Carpet Boulevard in Baton Rouge. So waiting around before I left. Mo, you know, everybody else went to a party or something. I had a headache, so I didn't want to go to the party with them. So Mo said, look, Bleed, I know you got a headache, man, but before you leave, Slim on his way up here right now. So y'all got to meet. And I thank God and I thank Mo to this day that he kept me there that long, because that would be the first and last time I ever meet Soulja Slim. So we met each other in the parking lot, embraced, talked about doing a record. Then maybe somewhere within that time, like I said, getting back to the Me and Magic situation, and I'm telling him that I had met Slim, and Slim was cool. We didn't have a record. He say, man, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going straight to New Orleans and I'm putting Slim on the third verse. So I went to sleep excited like a kid Christmas time and said, look, man, as soon as y'all do that, call me and let me know it's done and let me hit a rock. You know, we wasn't on the email thing back then.
Nah.
So you know, guys had to mail you the record or bring it to you. You know what I mean? So here again, long story short, somewhere between 2, I want to say, and 4 that afternoon, I went to sleep and slept over noon. Do that, I just got home 6, 7 in the morning. So when I woke up to the phone ring I had with Magic, I said, man, y'all got the record? He said, nah, man, Slim dead. You know what I mean? True life story. So unfortunately, Slim didn't get to be on the record. And with Magic connections in Baton Rouge and things like that, I didn't know he was, you know, intertwined with Boots and them and Liv Webb and all those guys at Trio. Shouts out to Trio, rest in peace to Liv Fat. Got together some kind of way, and Boots had put that third verse, you know what I mean, on the original I Smoke, I Drank. So that's how all that evolved, man, in a nutshell, man. Crazy times, fast times, and situations, you know.
So did you ever sign with Roy Jones' label?
No, I did the same kind of deal, and actually, kind of at the same time that I was a part of West Coast Mafia. Like I say, keep in mind, I was doing co-op deals at this time. So I had the co-op deal to where I wasn't signed exclusively to West Coast Mafia. So I did another co-op deal with Bodyhead, you know what I mean? So really, when you saying, and he again shouts out to Roy Jones and Bodyhead when we talking Once Upon a Time in America, he helped finance some of that record. They hands was kind of in the same pack, you know what I mean, in more ways than one, and me being in the middle. So that kind of go, if you look inside the original cover, I want to say you're going to see the West Coast Mafia logo, a few records, the Bodyhead records, then whatever we was doing on Detention Home Entertainment at the time, Carter Young Family, what have we. So yeah, all us kind of worked together. Roy sent me actually out to California to get some beats from Bosco. If everybody remember the world famous Bosco, produced for the Click, Shaw, you name them. You know what I'm saying, off the West Coast. So I go to Bosco crib and record at least about 3 joints. And 2 I released on Once Upon a Time in America. Music and Money that featured David Banner and what's the name of that song? Tear This Motherfucker Up is the other song that's produced by Bosco, and it's the third one that was never released. So, you know, and all those efforts and all those support systems, and, you know, here again, back to that independent, not being the exclusive artist that gave me it allowed my creative freedom to do what it wanted to do, because I wasn't signed exclusive to nobody, and I kind of, you know, make my records how I wanted to make. So
So
yeah.
how many records you got now through your whole time period on release?
Oh,
Minus a few collabos and the Carleon Click album, maybe 8-9 solo YoungBleed albums. But maybe with those added, somewhere around 13, 14 records that just came from under my umbrella, my name alone. And everything else, I'm featured on so many records, unreleased and released throughout the world, man. So yeah, all over the place.
What's up with the Corleone family now?
Everybody, it's the same thing, just everybody that grew up and out, but we still family. We actually working on a second Corleone family album called Keep It in the Family, man, as we speak. You know what I mean? So yeah, everybody working and just, building their own brands. And that's what I always recommended to the concentration camp, man. When I get up, if you need to borrow my label, use my label. Not build your own. Everybody learn their own independence. Because, we all not going to be here forever. Everybody ain't here to hold each other's hands. So I respect independence at the end of the day. So we all have our independence. It's like Voltron. And I always use that case scenario. We all are 5 lines, but when we need to form the mighty Voltron, we know where each other had to come together and do what we need to do to keep it going.
Yeah. I remember a wild conversation we had a while back. You was telling me you had a good relationship with the Dog Pound. You still cool with Daz and everybody?
Yeah, man, I hadn't talked to Daz maybe a couple of years or something like that now, but yeah, of course, man, I was one of Snoop's favorites when I first come to No Limit, and the record took off so tremendously, that bonded me with a lot of guys over time. When I meet them, they always tell me about that record to show me they still had that record, when I was coming up. So yeah, hadn't talked to Snoop in years, but anytime we saw each other, it was good repertoire and that type of thing. But Daz is the only one that did like 2 records with me. Man, Corrupt is cool. I met Corrupt. He was probably one of the latest I met years later. And different times. I never was with all 3 of them at the same time. I met Snoop when I met Snoop, met Daz when I met Daz, and Corrupt years later, in the Michigan area. So, like I say, you'd be surprised who you're gonna meet and where you're gonna meet them at. Superfly as well. Who else from the Dog Pound?
You heard me, Badass?
Badass, that's who I'm trying to remember. I knew it was somebody else. Rest in peace. That was my guy. I met Badass.
That was my homie.
Man, 1998, man. We got, it's actually a picture that's floating around somewhere around the publicist or somebody in Priority that has a picture of me, Daz, the day I met Daz, Badass, and about 50 Crips shooting a video out in California. You know what I mean? So if I ever maybe to get my hands on that picture, I'm gonna post it somewhere. But rest in peace, Badass. He was a good guy, man.
Yeah, he was.
But yeah, Rage. I'm not mentioning Rage. I'm trying not to forget nobody, but Rage is like a sister to me. As well as I didn't get to meet Nate Dogg, but I know I had the honor and the pleasure of meeting young Nate Dogg, his son, man. So yeah, shouts out to the Dog Pound. Yes, sir.
So how did it happen with this deal with Strange Lane?
And really, here again, the same 360-degree circle. I forget what Dave Weiner's exact position was in Priority, but that was the first man to walk me off a plane in California. He again on the strength of P and just the whole connection and getting the deal. But he greeted me at LAX and walked me into Priority and explained to me the fundamentals of what was going on and welcome to California. But Dave Weiner years later will become vice president at Strange. And within the time I'm not gonna say it in a sense of in a negative way of separating from West Coast Mafia. We had did those couple of records and didn't know what direction that I was gonna head in next or what the on West Coast. I was supposed to start at West Coast Mafia South for Steve-O. And once he kind of headed back west and I headed toward Virginia somewhere, then that kind of stayed stagnant. Within that time period of moving from Virginia back to Louisiana, I was working on a project in Kansas City. Shouts out to my man Chauncey Clyde and my brother Money Waters out to Dallas, Texas.
Oh, yeah, y'all was supposed to do a group project. You and Chauncey, right?
And we did. We did one that's called 3-Headed Monster. A few of those songs on the internet, if not the whole album. A lot of people don't know about that. But we did that project, and actually Chauncey was riding with Dave one time in Kansas City and playing that record. And Dave recognized that he had to know me. And, you know, they talked me up and he gave me a call and um, put me and Dave back together. In the midst of that, you know, Dave was wondering what I had going on. I was between contracts, so, you know, it was a perfect opportunity. So he kind of was that bridge between the gap of me and N9ne and Travis O'Gwen that I had never met in life. I was a Tech fan naturally. But that's that whole connection. Shouts out to Dave Weiner, man, since Pearl Harbor.
How was your time with Strange?
It was cool, the same kind of bittersweet, man. They made me a whole lot of promises, you know, and different things like that that I didn't have to rekindle the past and be in a better position that I had been in before. And we started like that, but when they came out, you know, they didn't, to me, didn't hold up that end of the bargain. A lot of other things I believe should have and could have been taken care of, just wasn't taken care of in that manner to get me where I was trying to go. So another one, you know, in that sense, bite the dust, you know, no bitter feelings, no harsh feelings. I just walked away from that situation as well. But we had a good, let's say 2-year run at a max. You know, I want to say we might have started working on that deal 2010, and I might have signed officially then, was able to release a record 2011. A book as well. Shouts out to Sarin Baker that did help me do my first book called The Making of Preserve, with that album being called Preserve, and just breaking me into the book world and the book market, coinciding with that project. And they just, you know, it wasn't putting together business-wise hand in hand, and where a lot of people don't even know that exists. But, you know, somewhere 2012, yeah, I left the label and just, you know, remained to keep my independence.
I kind of want to switch gears. You kind of spoke on this earlier a little bit. So
Yeah.
you say you're living in Louisville now, but you're from Baton Rouge. So I noticed a lot of artists have been moving because of the things that are going on. My question is, like, how do you feel about that? Because you do seem kind of deep, and I want you to kind of elaborate on how you feel on all of that going on, because it's a serious thing. Because there's some hitters out there.
Okay, my thing was that wasn't my initial aim. You know what I mean? To start with, I wasn't aware of the COVID till somewhere around maybe February, March. I started hearing it. I had just left Chicago. I want to say early that year in January, since the No Limit show, since November 30th to sometime in January, maybe a week or two in January 2020, I was still in Chicago. Then I headed to H-Town, and I, you know, went back home for a little while, sat around for some months till I got the tour offer. Coming off the tour, coming off of that. No, I'm saying that backwards. No, I'm saying that right. Let me get it together, man. Just getting the time frame. But after the tour, I stayed in Chicago, went to H-Town to do some being part of the radio station. Then I went back home for a little while. And while I was in Chicago, I met a guy, shouts out to Marvelous Marv, up there in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had been to Cincinnati once or twice, you know, doing some records and maybe even a show. And he was a promoter guy that reached out to me while I was still in Chicago about doing the show somewhere in March, April in Cincinnati. So within that time, I'm back in Baton Rouge. I'm preparing for that. Everything is a go. I had some friends and family. I've been coming to Louisville for well over 10 years or so now. So I got another offer within the week following it to do a show in Louisville. So without having the COVID or any of that in mind, I head out somewhere in of March or something like that, going into April, and went to Cleveland, not Cleveland, but Cincinnati, Ohio, to do the show. And, you know, what was the sense in going all the way back to the South and coming back, you know what I mean, when I'm right up the road from Louisville. So due to my friend and family connection, I came on down to Louisville. I stayed in Ohio for a week, and toward the show time, they drove me down and wanted to come see the show, of course. And we did that. And within that, I stayed a few extra days and was kind of, you know, looking at where I was finna move around for us, heading back home. No, actually, I had a few other shows. I was supposed to go to California since from the Louisville show, from California to Houston, Texas, to getting a movie with a good friend of mine by the name, that's an artist as well, by the name of Lil Young. That's an artist at Swisher House. You know, shouts out to Mike Watts and all those guys.
I think he's actually I remember that. Isn't he like I think he's a Spanish kid, right? Isn't he a
Yeah,
Spanish
he's
kid?
Spanish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about. So,
Yeah, my essay brother. So I had that offer to come and get in that movie. Then we're supposed to do a show maybe a week before or after that in Macon, Georgia. So that was my whole set out when I left from Baton Rouge. But then the state line started shutting down and different things like that. You know what I mean? I got friends and family in Indiana. I went out there to shoot a DVD, and within that week, we was finna head out toward the West Coast. And they started telling everybody go get all the grocery you can get, and we finna start closing the country. So I was closer to here, you know what I mean? A lot of places that became home for me due to the situation and business deals or whatever the situation was. So I come back up this way. And from that, everything just took a turn for the worse. So at times that I try to head back, I refuse to fly on the plane and any of that type of thing after I had flew up here, keeping in mind when I come down for the first time I was on the plane, on the runway for about an hour or two. Then we had to wait in the airport for about 3 or so hours before you even got your baggage. So I refused to go back based off of that trip alone. So let alone in the COVID. So it's good to have, good to know people. So I stayed around where I felt like I was safer in hopes of everything opening back up and, eventually working back and catching up on the rest of the shows. And just, as y'all witness and I witnessed the way it still is to this day, who knows, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're just waiting day by day. That's all we can
hey
do.
man.
Real talk.
Absolutely.
So your son raps?
Yeah, man. My firstborn, man. Yeah, Taji Ramon. He also do the R&B. R&B is his love, but he doing his thing on the rap thing as well. He kind of mix and mesh the music, but yeah, man, he been doing it for a long time. I want to say since a teenager, and different things like that. And a lot of times, I had to share with him and had been around. I raised him in the studios that I was raised in. I bring him around. So he took to certain things early, and he blows my mind all the time now from everything he's doing, recording, producing, filming, all kind of stuff now. So yeah, man,
Does he have
absolutely.
any? Is there anything out right now that
Yeah,
we
you
can
got a
look
lot of
at?
stuff already. Yeah, you
Yeah,
got a
man,
lot.
you could pull up on Taji Rahman on the YouTube. He has his own YouTube subscribe page. YBTV Network is our label page, for Trapdoor Entertainment and YBTV. And pretty much everything I'm involved in. But yeah, Google him or go straight to the YouTube, Taj Rahman, and hit the subscribe button, man. He do his thing and, hell of a work ethic all the time. Yes, sir.
What do you remember about working with Ohio artist Sokosa?
You say Ohio artist?
Yeah, Sokosa. Do you remember Sokosa?
So, oh my God, man. Oh my goodness. Rest in peace, man.
Yeah,
Rest in
he's
peace.
Sokosa too.
I love Sokosa, man. I miss him. The funny thing about it, man, I moved up to Michigan for a while, and I forgot who originally connected me and Sokosa. And he called me to do a record, and we became friends and family for that matter from that. He was a good brother. I liked his vocal tone, and he used to crack me up, that type of thing. And eventually he called me out to Toledo to do a video. Shouts out to Geach as well too. So we did a nice video for what we call it. I got so many how you do that there. I want to say how you it's something like that. Um, it's something like that. I want to say it's another how you do that there, or do that there, I believe we called it. And we did a nice video, man, and I felt like anybody heard that record love it to this day. But unfortunately, man, within the 6-9 month span, we had talked and he was talking about bringing me back out there to do a show. And then I didn't hear from him for a while and I could never get back in contact with him. And one day we were shooting a movie, shots out to Kamal Miley out there in Detroit. And he had a few guys come up from Toledo. And they either the guys that can't call their name right now that connected us, but we knew each other from the same circle. And they asked me just what you asked me. Say, bro, you heard about Sokosa? Or, asked me in that form. And I was like, nah, man, what's going on? Say Sokosa passed away, man. I didn't know that. I still was looking for him. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, that happened to him. I heard, a story or two, but I've been trying to catch up and talk to Geese. So, Geese, if you're listening, man, I've been trying to reach out your family, man, so we can pick up where Big Bro left off and keep it moving. But yeah, much love, respect. That was my big partner, man. I miss him.
How did that song with you and Kevin Gates come about?
You know, Kevin Gates, what I always thought, but I found out originally he's not from South Baton Rouge. But when he started to come up and about, he was living there wherever he moved from. I want to say New Orleans or something before that, and then Martin Tower City. But in our hood, I'm talking Dead Game, and you know those guys that built Dead Game was his backbone and all that portion of his career. So naturally, my OGs and big brothers and that type of thing. So me and Sebo was actually living in Dallas, you know, at the time. And Sebo shared some of his southern roots with me, man. Let me know he's really from like guess he'll mind me saying this, Ruston, Louisiana, and moved to California as a kid and grew out that way. So we back touring through Louisiana. He had never, maybe he had been to New Orleans before, but had never been to Baton Rouge. So we decided to drive from Texas and go to Baton Rouge. So I bring him through the hood, and the first place we stopped off the interstate was at Dead Game. And so happened, me and Gates had been around each other, you know, maybe more so in the clubs and different things like that between Louisiana and Mississippi before the world would take to him when he was still trying to get on. You know, he'd be at some of my shows and kicking it. And, you know, if he wanted to rap on the microphone, he was doing this thing, not saying to take nothing from him, but I give him the mic after I get off the stage, and he'll freestyle phenomenally in the corner. And people wasn't really on him. About a year or two after that, you know, like they laugh about me coming from where we come from, I laugh about that. Because I remember being that same kid. They're not paying attention to you one year, next year they all know you. Like how Mike Jones say, back then you didn't know me, you know.
Right. Did you see that he was gonna be the megastar he is?
Yeah, that's why I give him the microphone. You know, I could be in the corner and he'd say, Bleed, give me the mic. You know, other than that, the promoter, the DJ want the mic back. But he was one of the younger cats that I'd take the risk and hand him the mic. You see what I'm saying? So that type of thing, I remember that one particular incident in Mississippi. But fast forwarding the tape on, when me and Bo went to Dead Game, he was working on whatever you call it, whatever they want to call it, whatever, you know, that the mixtape he was doing.
Right.
I want to say the title wrong, but he was working on that record, and naturally meeting Sebo for the first time. The OGs wanted to do a record with Bo, and you know they did some business, so they did a record. And they asked me, you know, did I want to do a record with Gates? We ended up doing 2 records that night. I don't know if they even ever released the Sebo record, but that record we did. I got so many titles in my head that's so similar. Play It How It Go. We recorded that night, and I was able to come out on that mixtape. But that was all in just me and Sebo deciding to leave Texas and ride so I could show him Baton Rouge. Yeah, the first place we stopped, man. So yeah, shouts out to Kevin Gates and Tommy Ray, Silver Slim, them over there at Dead Game, man.
Yo, we gotta ask this question. We usually ask most people. Outside of hip hop, since you said you had a history of music, what you jamming?
Yeah.
You know, besides hip hop.
Right now,
when you out with the homies, when you not with the homies, you chilling at home, you like vibing out. What you listening to that nobody would think?
With me, man, that's kind of like an infinite question. It's just like I always tell people this: if I could put telepathic things they put on your mind, man, when they scanning your brain. You know, I got an inside built radio, man. Some of the original songs that, you know what I mean, have been in me to do for years and ages. But half of the time, you know, it's not in a particular time zone. I listen to something that I like that's current, but I might be listening to something that's Robert Johnson, 1937 or something. Jimi Hendrix on the in-between, Pink Floyd. So, far as rapping right now, it's something that I was recently listening to. Oh wow, what was that, man? Just to narrow it down, you know, I hear what's on the radio and different things like that. The baby, Lit Baby, I like all that's going on. It's something else that I'm missing, man, when you ask that question that I listen to and I kind of like a lot. I can't pull out of power right now. But just whatever at the time, you know what I mean, throughout the day, whatever my mode is, you know, it might be some reggae music or anything like that. So, you know, it's different vibes with me. It kind of go with my thought process. Whatever the course of that day is, it's a song that I play in my head that's the soundtrack to that. So that go in any time frame, you know what I mean?
Is there any artist right now that you want to work with?
I'm always open to whoever willing to work with me. It's like I say, you learn the complexity of the game. It's easier said than done. It's a lot of artists I love to work with. It's a lot I've been reaching out to for years and got yet to have those records. So I kind of take that in stride. You know, I meet people, I get connected to people. I make an extra effort to try to let them know I'm open to that. But it take two at the end of the day. So yeah, here again, that's all but an infinite list going back to the old school on into who present day, you know what I mean?
Do you think it's more of a business thing? Why they're not reaching out, or is just maybe?
Um, I mean, thought process. This is gonna be a numerous thing. What I don't do is disrespect nobody, step on nobody's toes, and I try not to burn no bridges. So that's when it's a thin line between business and personal with me. If we never did business, I don't know you, you don't know me. I don't know what you heard or what you're going off of. So it's a lot of questions that come to mind. And like I say, speaking with 24, 25 years in the industry for me, you know what I mean? And longer than that in the underground. So I have my thoughts of why this not taking place. I try to get the people what they want. And, you know, you see the comments from YouTube to whatever, and I try to make some of those things happen. And rather it's not being received on the other end or what's the disconnection, then I'm saw disconnecting type of things, the middleman on the in-between or somebody not relating the message. So it goes so many ways. So here again, I learned not to, take this or try to take this person a long time ago when I understood, why some people don't answer the phone. Some people would rather you text them than call them. So it's a lot of different rules and rudiments you have to learn with here again, dealing with individuals and definitely individuals that's busy and got entourage and yes men and all that on the in between. So I'm a guy I like to talk. I don't really care too much for a phone. I use it because it's necessary, but I like to sit down like you two guys doing and you hear it out the horse's mouth and that way ain't no in between. So here again, I'm open to wouldn't work with me, man.
So here's something.
Yep. Well, give everybody where they can find you, reach out to you. Because I know you got a busy schedule. We got to get up out of here.
Before we go, I got one more question.
Yo,
I ask everybody this as well. 5 years. What do you see in 5 years? What do you see going? What you got going? Plans, things like that.
Me, here again, rebuilding my label in the sense right now we have anywhere between 22, 23 artists over here at Trapdoor Entertainment. Here again, starting with my son and everybody that's a part of the entourage and under the umbrella. I want to see that go and grow. I want to play my part, of course, go out on top and kind of back up off the scene as the poster child. You see what I'm saying? I'm not trying to do what I did in 1998, be 22 years old, and it's a race for this, that, and the other. So I'm learning that part of from the executive seat where I can stick my hand and head in where necessary. And that I want to see the boys be boys and win the game. So that's my life expectancy, man. And long as God put the fuel in me and He say win, I'm gonna keep going with the pen. But I'm headed toward, I'm 40 plus, man. So I'm heading to that other direction. I'm still, still got a young on my name, still feeling good and all that. But just getting more into living life and like I say, dabbling with this when I'm inspired to do it or when I'm called to do it. And other than that, yeah, just growing to some other ventures, man, as far as businesses and different things like that. So that's my plan.
Well, we definitely wish the best for you. Everything you got.
Thank you, sir, man. And like
you already know I'm gonna keep supporting. Absolutely. I talk to you all the time, so you already know I'm gonna keep supporting. So
yeah, man.
Give everybody your social media, your website, so they can find you, get at you.
Okay, absolutely, man. For the Facebook fans, man, you can find me on the YoungBleed fan page. If you're a Twitter fan, it's at Real YoungBleed, and on Instagram, The Real YoungBleed, man. And all those fails, Google me. And also let me not forget this. Trapdoor let me say it right. TrapdoorENT.com. It's all whatever dates I got coming up. Merchandise. Old and new music. So that's the personal website for the label. YBTV Network on YouTube. Y'all tap into that. And let me see what I might be missing. Of course, tap in every week to Bangin' 832 Radio, man. That's Bangin' 83 www.bangin832radio.com, man. Get another glimpse of me from another platform, man. Doing these interviews and being a co-host on a podcast station, man. So yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, man. The future near you. You know what I mean?
All right.
For sure. Appreciate that.
All right, Bleed. Well, we thank you a lot for your time, brother.
Okay, same here, family. I appreciate y'all, man. Much respect, success, and God bless, man.
No, we out.
Yeah.
Yeah.